All right. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Welcome, everybody, to a super special DevOps Insights Forum. The DevOps Insights Forum, you're asking yourself, well, what is it? It's a monthly open space for professionals to chat about software development, delivery, and reliability. Today, we're talking about DevOps trends and predictions. I'm Sam Fell, and the topic today is, as I mentioned, DevOps trends, predictions, and New Year's resolutions. Guess what? In the land of DevOps and continuous delivery, things change. Keeping up with these changes across skills, processes, and core technologies can be overwhelming. How do you understand and best position yourself to take advantage of the shifts underway? Join this fantastic panel of very knowledgeable people as we discuss the driving forces of DevOps in 2022, the opportunities and challenges that we encountered, and the forces that we see shaping the industry moving forward. We've got, as I mentioned, a fantastic panel of industry experts who are out there every day talking with practitioners and folks just like you about all of these problems and all of the solutions to these problems. Let me introduce them. Let me have them introduce themselves, actually. Mitch, let's start with you.
Great. Thank you, Sam. Great to be here with everyone. Great panel again of colleagues. I'm Mitch Ashley. I am principal with Techstrong Research, and I also am service CTO with Techstrong Group, the organization that helps put on this event with Sam and with Sumo Logic. So thank you very much, Sam.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. Mr. Betts.
Greetings all. It's an honor to be here. Thank you, Sam. Charlie Betts, Research Director with Forrester Research, currently covering enterprise architecture, but I'm coming off of about 5 years of focusing on DevOps.
Lovely. It's great to see you. Thanks for joining us. Torsten. Oh, actually, no, sorry. I'm looking at my thing, and I should be just looking at the slide. So Bruno, sorry, Torsten. I didn't mean to get you all excited.
Yeah, Torsten. No go. Hi, everybody. It's good to be back here with this great group of people. My name is Bruno. I'm a founder and head of strategy at a company called Sumo Logic. We are a cloud-native observability and security platform that our customers use to, provide reliability and security for their mission-critical applications.
Excellent. Thank you, Bruno. Evelyn.
Yes, hello there, and thank you, Sam. Evelyn Ehrlich, I'm Research Director at Research in Action. I cover a lot of topics, including DevOps. I'm also Chief Research Officer at the DevOps Institute, where I do some research as well.
Wonderful. It's awesome to see you. And Torsten, last but not least, I get to say your name twice during the introduction, so there you go. So Torsten, welcome.
Finally, thank you, Sam. Good morning, everybody. I'm Torsten Volk, as I like to pronounce the last name. Research director at Enterprise Management Associates. I don't have as much hair anymore as on this picture, though. My areas are DevOps and machine learning / deep learning / artificial intelligence, and the overlap between those two.
Awesome. So as you can tell, we've got a whole host of very knowledgeable folks on the panel today. This panel, if you've ever joined these before, this panel is for you, chat. We're going to answer some questions. We're going to ask ourselves some questions. We want you to get in there and ask some questions as well. I see some people already joining in from LA, from New Hampshire, from Seattle. Put your name in the chat. Go ahead and say hello to folks. Warm up your chat. Engage with our panelists. Ask questions. Offer answers and insight. We really all can learn from each other, and that's what we're looking for. Be respectful. If you're not, you'll be kicked. And then just share feedback. If there's something that we can do better, continuous improvement is part of our stick. So as part of all of these different programs, one thing that we do with our partners over at DevOps.com is we run a high-level poll on DevOps.com. If you are in front of your computer, which I think you may be, go to DevOps.com website. You could see our partner DevOps.com has lots of great writers and lots of great information about stuff that's happening in DevOps. And they write about it all year long, 365 days a year, every year. And so they're running these polls for us. The first poll that we ran on their website was super simple, high level. in 2022, we DevOps better than in 2021? And the possible answers for you here: did you DevOps better last year than you did the year prior? True, false, or we haven't even started getting DevOps. So go ahead and give yourself an answer, and let's see how people think they're doing. We got Canada on the line. We got India on the line. We got Denver with some snow coming. DC, Boston. Very nice. All right. Let's see what we say. Wow. So pretty big acceleration in the perception of how people are DevOpsing last year versus the year prior. I love to see this. And I also like seeing that 0% haven't started, which means that.
Oh, no.
One just slipped in. Somebody slipped in.
Uh-oh. Jason. Maybe it was Jason. To quote Hamlet, he says no. So maybe he's the one who hasn't started. Okay. So that's fine, right? There are a few folks who haven't started. It's not easy to DevOps, right? There's a whole bunch of cultural stuff. Colombia, I love it, from the UK. People all over the world. So this is pretty interesting. So this is what our group here says, 88%. So let's just call it, how do we get 88% and 9% and 3%? Yeah, okay.
Interesting software.
Right?
Platform.
It's moving around. More people haven't started. I guess they're waking up to the fact that maybe they haven't started. So let's take a look at so very similar. True, about 80%. False was a little bit less. This was 370 people that were looking at this one. And there were more that had not started. So more people of the general public who hadn't started than the folks who opted to come and join us at this webinar, which seems to make a little bit of sense.
Yeah, a broader audience that reads DevOps.com.
Right. So our next polling question, my biggest area of focus for improvement last year was oriented around the value stream, SRE practices, observability, security, the operating model, the org structure, or culture. What was your biggest area of focus for improvement last year? And then I'll give people a second to put their responses in. I'm interested to see where this one goes.
Would have been nice to have all of the above, because I think we're working on all those, Sam.
Yeah, and I just noticed we got Mark Hornbeek on the line here from Puerto Vallarta. Welcome, Mark. Awesome to see his name out there, another expert in the field. My biggest area of focus for improvement last year was around the pipeline, the DevOps CI/CD value stream, SRE, observability, and security. Operating model. Look at the operating model and security. So DevOps, the CI/CD pipeline, security, and the operating model. Excuse me. Seem to be the places where people are focused, and security getting another bit of a bump there. Obviously, security is pretty important. You think about Log4j, you think about last year's a big year. I think every year, I guess, is a big year for security, which is good, right? People should be paying attention to that and building that in. All right, so how did what we said in our little group here match up to the broader community? So they also agreed, 375 people also agreed that the CI/CD value stream was one of the most important ones, security being the next most important one, and then it was sort of split between observability and operating model, which is interesting. And I'm interested in also, I think, culture and operating model. If we only had one of those, if we had culture/operating model, I'll bet you that one would have taken 18% there, because I think those two things go hand in hand. Very interesting, though. This is surprising. Does anybody have any other thoughts on how that focus for the automation and that value stream?
Well, one initial reaction, Sam, and I was watching as the numbers were coming in on DevOps.com, it tells me people are still investing in the core functions within DevOps. really getting in, and whether they're doing continuous delivery or yet or not, they're still focusing on kind of this new way or new process of delivering software. So we aren't at that we're all experts at it yet curve.
Right.
And also security. SBOM and software supply chain were tip of the tongue in 2022. Right. So not surprised to see that either.
Awesome. Any other thoughts, or I'll move on to the next one?
Yeah, I think the culture piece is interesting because it directly influences all of the above. And this year, talking to a lot of those software vendors at the usual events like KubeCon or reInvent that we just had, I noticed that those vendors, even though they want to obviously push software, they have become aware that that works much better if you influence the culture first, like a culture of observability, a culture of security, an SRE culture. That was one of my conclusions this year.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point.
Culture is very important. Yeah, culture is hugely important. I'm not sure if it's just me, but I'm having you come through in like waves. Is that just me?
It is.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So there seems to be maybe something going on with your audio, Torsten, where it's like buffering it. I see your lips moving, and then all of a sudden the words will come. I'm not sure.
Oh, with my audio?
Other folks in the chat, if you can let us know if we're seeing the same thing.
Hang on.
Bruno and I are experiencing that.
I thought Bruno just.
But
Bruno,
we heard what you said.
For me? No?
All right. So that's awesome. I do think culture is a super important aspect of all of these things. I agree with you. And where are people looking to improve next year? So exactly the same list. What are you focused on for next year? Let's go ahead and ask the question. Where are you going to be spending your time next year around this DevOps aspect? What do you think?
Dum 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 dum.
Yeah,
dum, dum.
Exactly.
This is going to be
queued up.
Yeah, this is a good one.
All right, let's see the answers start to come in. Better consistent performance. Yeah, he's got some latency issues, Darren. You're right. Okay, where are we going to be focused next year? So observability is getting a big chunk. Operating model, CI/CD value stream. Observability is crushing it right now. I don't know.
Yeah, it is.
People want to see what's going on, I guess. They're tired of just going fast and not having a speedometer. Not the deal. Security taking a back seat to SRE work and org structure. It's kind of all over the place for next year. But observability, gotta say, observability one is getting some.
There you go.
And then if you go to the website, here's what people are focused on. So again, they think that this next year, they'll be spending a lot more of their time on that value stream, just automating that pipeline, getting that consistency, and automating that value stream. Observability was represented, but nowhere near as highly.
It's like the lowest.
Yeah, nowhere near as highly represented as what's going on right now. So very interesting. Thank you all for participating. I wish you all the best of luck on your focus for next year. I hope you crush it, especially if you're all doing observability. I think that's lovely. That works out really well for me. So, okay. So let's talk about technology and how businesses' relationship with technology changed in 2022. We talked about a few of these things already, right? Log4j, somebody mentioned ransomware. We're talking about CI/CD. the relationship that business has with technology, I think, is changing, and that is going to impact all of us. But what are your thoughts on this? And Evelyn, I warned you that I was going to be a gentleman and let you speak first. So I would love to ask you this question. How has business's relationship with tech, how have you seen that relationship change last year? And how do you think it's going to change next year?
I knew you would pick on me first, so I appreciate it. Thank you, Sam. So I would say, after being in this space and being an analyst seems like forever, last year was the first time I have seen this to be more of a love relationship rather than a I wouldn't say hate, but one of those distant situations. And I think what is happening is, particularly as a lot of organizations are continuously changing their strategy towards the digital transformation, and they're in it, or that at the beginning, or they're somewhere, right? Nobody's done because it's an ongoing thing. There has to be, they have realized that there's a balancing which needs to be happening, a balancing between changing things versus running things, and having efficiency versus effectiveness, and having cost versus transparency, and having innovation versus delivery, and finally having fixing problems versus preventing them. And I think we see this. We see this in the survey you just did, right? We see observability, we see SRE, we see automation, we see a variety of things, and so that shows to me that there are we're on a path towards being together, and I think that's what is phenomenal and is a great outcome from the pandemic, because we know that we cannot do without the technologists, but the technologists cannot exist without the business. And so we used to talk about alignment, but who cares about alignment, because IT is also a business function. And I think that's what I've seen over 22.
Interesting. And so I put the question into the chat. Do folks feel like they're getting better aligned with the technologies, getting better aligned with the business? That it's no longer adversarial, that it is more, we are all in sort of the same boat together mindset. So let us know if you're seeing that. Very good, Evelyn. Awesome. All right. Let's see. Torsten, I'm going to go to you next. Torsten, what are your thoughts about this? How have you seen the relationship between business and technology sort of evolve last year, and where do you think it's going?
Yeah, that goes along the same lines as Evelyn. First of all, Sam, can you guys hear me okay this time?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, it goes along the same lines as what Evelyn was mentioning. The technology guys are no longer seen as the guys over there, and the business guys are over here. And when somebody makes a mistake, there is less finger pointing, is what I'm finding. And there's also more transparency in both directions, and at least there's an effort to do so and to implement a culture to do so. And at the same time, we also see a lot more burnout in the operations areas, and it seems like the business is sometimes driving the operators harder than in the years before, and burnout has become more of a problem. Also with the aspect of remote work is what we are finding. And the second aspect is observability, which is again something that everybody is, or at least should be, working on. And we all accept collectively less that old separation between logs and traces and metrics and everything else in terms of events that we are getting. And we are arranging those events much more, or we are at least trying to normalize those events and arranging them along the lines of what we care about for business. And we are trying to get the developers in that area, in that direction as well, where we have the operators usually, they have the observability tools, and now we're pushing it into the direction of we as the businesses, pushing the direction into so that the developers also benefit and see what happens when they make a change, when they have a new release, and can react and can learn for the future. So observability becoming a collaborative platform for business operators, developers, is something that people are thinking about, and they still have a long way to go, but it's great to see them get started as opposed to in years before where there was still only on the horizon.
Yeah, I think when you think about observability as just feedback loop, it starts to make a lot more sense as part of the DevOps lifecycle, because it's absolutely critical to understand what your change just did in production.
And it designs responsibility, right?
Yeah. Yep. And there's good alignment there for sure. So I think that's really interesting, Torsten. Thank you for that. Mara made a comment in her field, the business relationship with tech. It still feels like patient care over patient security or privacy, and so I'm wondering if the intent behind that was basically that there is a more of an intention to help the person than to protect the data from the business relationship. I'm wondering if that's what you mean, Mara. If you could be more specific, that would be fantastic. So we can.
If that's what she meant, I'm still a +1 on that one.
Yeah, and I still think that feels pretty good. Although I don't want my private information to be broadcasted.
The close second would be the privacy.
Well, yeah. So it's funny.
Unless it's a cold. If it's cold, I'm okay the other way. Right?
Right. You don't mind people knowing you have a cold. I had a cold last week, full disclosure. All right. So Bruno, since I've already got you speaking, what are your thoughts on this, on how businesses' relationship with tech changed? What did you see at Sumo Logic? What did you see with our customers and the people that you talk to? What are your thoughts here?
Well, let me kind of step away from the tech field and the technology sort of customers that I talked a lot to, and maybe talk a little bit about more of the traditional business. And I say that I use the word traditional in a non-derogatory way here. Right? It's companies that are not building software as core of their business, or at least they're not seeing that as part of their business. So what I've seen, what I still see there is that there is this chasm between technologists and business folks in the company. I think both Torsten and Evelyn have touched on it. Culturally, I think the business in the traditional industries has not yet realized that technology is their business, right? Especially as they're digitizing, and sort of the pandemic as an accelerant. I just shared with my executive staff just yesterday an article that talked about, e-commerce trends from the pandemic are here to stay, right? Why would anybody want to not have these accelerated benefits of digital convenience and everything else not stay, right? And so I think that the relationship between business and tech is still, I think, transactional, and tech is still seen a lot in a lot of places as some kind of an IT thing buried deep down under the bowels of the business. But the business is really this other thing over here. And, there's still two classes of citizens, if you want to think of it that way. But I do think that that's not going to last very long. I think there's been changes there. You can see that, companies are realizing that technology is sort of, without technology, there's no business in any industry these days. But I do think that there's still a long ways to go before we get there, because I think hierarchies and culture and all this stuff takes a lot to change.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you, Bruno. Charlie, you talk to a lot of folks. What are you seeing out there?
Well, I think I'm going to bring in the economic context. We're certainly seeing signals of the recession. And whenever the economy hiccups, it's interesting. We always see an uptick of interest in architecture, inventories, portfolios, all of that kind of stuff. People want to know what they have. And there is a revival of interest in enterprise architecture. We are hearing more organizations saying, yeah, we decentralized and split it up, 5 years ago. Now we're bringing it back together. But there's a big asterisk there. Nobody wants to go back to the bad old days of waterfall and ivory tower EA and, heavy duty, stage gated life cycles. People in general like what DevOps and Agile have done with product teams and the new operating model. There's just a sense that we need a little bit of course correction, that we're seeing a little bit too much fragmentation, a little bit too much expansion in the attack surface, in the diversity of vendors in the portfolio, the non-value add variation. Do we really need 15 different flavors of database or monitoring tool or whatever? And there is definitely interest in starting to tighten some of that back down, but hopefully without losing some of the advances that have been made that are resulting in general. And I do agree that IT is, it's no longer the gang that can't shoot straight. It is starting to become a respected part of of the business. And I think that DevOps and Agile had a lot to do with that in terms of being able to deliver more quickly.
I think that's really interesting, and I want to ask the audience just a yes/no question. At your company, is your development team, your engineering team, considered a differentiation for you? Your ability to develop software, is that a differentiator for you when you look across the competitors that you have in your field? Do you believe that your technology is competitive and is differentiated? Be interesting to understand that. Awesome. Charlie, that's fantastic. Mitch.
Yeah, I want to play off the last point you were making, Sam, and we've all been saying sort of IT, software, architecture are starting to be elevated. You don't make change without starting changing people's viewpoints. So it's a long road ahead, as Bruno was talking about. But you don't hear a lot of talk about silver bullets in technology anymore. What you hear much more from organizations is the business's view on their organization's ability to deliver software, whether that be inside IT or outside of IT. And this during a climate, as Charlie was talking about, the economic changes. There's also been the rebuilding of supply chains, the kind of systematizing, all the stuff we did in the pandemic. It's been a really kind of influx, transitional year, I guess I would say. And we're not sure what we're transitioning to. So I think business leaders are, just as importantly, not looking for a silver bullet in tech as much as, can I count on my teams to deliver what I need to deliver faster, quicker, and then be more agile about how we make decisions in the business, because I need that ability to handle all those things we've got to manage, uncertain economic times, supply chains, increased security issues, competitive issues, all that kind of thing. So to me, that's good news for the technologists if we focus on the business and on the customer and stop focusing on our own internal metrics only, and really focus on the value we're delivering to the business.
Nice. And you see that focus is coming to fruition. You feel that that's a focus that's getting more focus.
I think we're learning how to do that better. Let's put it that way.
Can I just jump in on that real quick? It's really interesting. I totally agree, but there is a big caveat there. In order to focus on the business as opposed to inside-out metrics, you have to understand your vertical, your business domain. And this is easier said than done. I get into discussions all the time about, for example, the DORA metrics, very well known, the DevOps research and assessment metrics. Great metrics. At the end of the day, they are inside out. And yet we can talk about them regardless of industry vertical. So we do. You start to say, well, we need to talk more about the business. Well, what business are you in? Retail, fintech, manufacturing? The discussion fragments at that point.
It's interesting, Charlie, too. I think one of the advantages of DevOps is it's not a dogmatic, defined methodology, and it can be adapted to you.
It must be adapted.
It has to be adapted, and which lets it grow and change, not to be just focused on the inside of it. But I absolutely agree. It's the more you know about the business. Matter of fact, the more you know what's important to the business, as well as know about the business, you'll make better decisions.
Yeah. And I see automation become more central from a cultural perspective, as if in or as in no longer accepting that something can't be automated, or that it's too different to standardize and automate. All of those excuses that we've all been dealing with over many years have become a little bit less valid with increasing flexibility of the tools. For example, infrastructure as code and compliance as code and all of those things. And at the same time, also with that requirement that the business doesn't know what's wrong or right exactly, but it's all about experimentation and quick course corrections. And automation has really caught on there.
I think that you just said something that makes me very happy, which is experimentation. I think that the business relationship with tech, and I've heard pieces of this from lots of different speakers, is that the ability for engineering teams to actually respond positively to requests from the business, and for the business to see that and to be able to respond reasonably with requirements. I think that that's a virtuous cycle that's starting inside of some of these companies, and that's giving them the ability to operate at a higher velocity. I think it's just muscle memory, and it's just experience. So I think that's lovely. I love that that's happening, because you think about it, it's two different sets of gears that should have been designed to mesh, but they weren't. They were not, and all of a sudden we had to jam them together over the past couple of years, about the past decade, and we're finally starting to get really good connection between those gears, which I think is lovely. Awesome. Okay. Next question. All right, this one is the Charlie special. How have operating models changed in 2022, and what changes do we expect to see in the operating models next year? This goes back to that culture, that organization, super critical, important stuff. Charlie, I'm going to start with you.
Oh boy, how much time do we have? And of course, this is not just 2022. I mean, this has been building. It was, I think, 2012 when I was with AT&T serving Target, and a chief architect with Target told me they were pivoting to a product-centric operating model. That's 10 years ago. And at that time, I was like, what on earth are you talking about? And here we are 10 years later. And at this point, it is the new operating model. I mean, without disclosing anything I shouldn't, companies on the record that are doing this, JPM's, JP Morgan Chase, Nationwide, Shell, of course, Target, and the list goes on. It's pretty much, we're in the late majority. But the challenge is if you're following team topologies, roughly speaking, we have stream aligned or, business and customer facing development, and that lends itself really well to product centric. The big challenge right now in 2022 is how do we bring this same philosophy to the infrastructure layer? And this is where we get into the whole conversation around platform teams. Now, platform teams are emerging out of the old infrastructure and operations organizations and philosophy, but they're struggling because that world has never had product management. And it is definitely a new muscle motion for them to act like product management, act like they care about internal customers. I mean, caring for the internal customer is not something that the typical IN organization is well known for, right? And I could go on, but this is where we are in 2022, is the pressure that these organizations are to become more agile and more responsive. And they're not going to do it without onboarding some product management talent. But there's a lot of challenges with bringing that perspective to this very large portion of digital infrastructure.
So, Charlie, how does that tie in? I've heard this conversation from project to product.
Exactly.
Was that
all part of it. And all roads lead to IT Rev Press. I mean, I've reviewed their books and I've known Gene Kim for a long time, so my view is of course a little biased, but nobody asks me about ITIL or COBIT or PMBOK anymore. They're all asking me about project to product by Mick Kirsten or team topologies by Skelton Pais or Accelerate. and I point out to them those books are all from the same publisher, and sometimes there's some head scratching when they hear that. But yeah, it is all about that, and they keep nailing it. And the next book is Radical Enterprise by Matt Parker, also by IT Rev Press, which is taking it to the logical extreme of these micro enterprise based organizations like Haier and Morningstar and Gore, where they've devolved P&L down to ridiculously low levels in the org chart. Haier is a federation of 4,000 micro enterprises. Everybody has P&L. Nobody's required to buy services from each other. And at that point, you better be thinking in terms of, I'm selling a product, and it doesn't matter if I'm selling it to the internal market or the external market. I need to
survive, right? I need revenue in order to be relevant. Yeah, interesting. So yeah, the whole product. Project to product is an interesting way of there's a book about it. There's a concept before the book, but generally at a high level, it's about reorienting yourself, not around I'm on a project team, but I am now supporting a product. And I have a stake in the success of that product, not just of a project.
Yep, exactly.
And I would add to what Charlie said. Sorry.
There you go.
Not just the success of the product. It is actually the value of it and having that defined by something, right? Which can be seen. Here's an example as one of the folks here in healthcare. In the United States, there's $1.5 billion lost on an annual basis in healthcare because of no-shows of patients, right? So let's take that example. No-shows of patients is horrible. And that having that OKR reduced or changed, that's a product, could be seen as a product. And if we all wrap our heads around the topic, both IT and the business owners, or in this case, the healthcare units owners, to figure out how to do that and how to reduce that, then we actually have a business OKR and a value, in this case, savings, because patients and nurses and doctors are all burned out. Patients don't show up, and nurses and doctors are burned out, and you kind of get it, right? So I think to what Charlie said, and back to his economic point, when we think about product and that gives us the possibility to align, because we're no longer in a camp of technology or a camp in a line of business, but we really have one common goal and we can create value with it or reduce waste, whatever it is. In some cases, in this case, it's reduction of waste.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. And $1.5 billion of just wasted time. That's insane.
Yeah.
If you could recapture that, what could that do?
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome, Evelyn. Thank you. Bruno, what are your thoughts on the operating model and how that's changed?
Yeah, look, I like what I've heard so far. This makes sense to me. And then, I'm going to just talk a little bit more about what Evelyn was talking about, because that was going to be my point, which is that, when we think about this product thing, what I'm seeing more and more is this sort of, to a degree, an extreme ownership within the technology teams, at least, right? I think there's a lot of learning to be had for the broader business from the technology teams, because what we are seeing is product being defined, with these sort of low-level capabilities people are building, right? And so they think about, a login service they're building, or a catalog service, or, some of those are more obviously product, but others are really not, right? But they think of them as product because they live and participate and enable something else. And if you can define the sort of success KPIs for these things, then it's, it becomes measurable and can be improved, and then you're incentivized to iterate faster, which teaches you more, and you can, evolve things. And so I think that what I'm seeing is that more of that is happening, where, what once would have been, sort of a function or a feature is now being thought of as a product. And I think that's ultimately driving better behavior.
Interesting. And that product alignment allows folks to rally around it and support it and understand the end-to-end sort of life cycle of it, as opposed to just sort of coming in. And
the hard part in this is that to align the sort of OKR hierarchically, sort of across the organization, right? It is relatively straightforward to look at, your own area and figure out what your KPIs are, right? But how does that support up above? And you know, we've struggled with it ourselves, and I think that's still non-trivial, because you got to see the forest for the trees and make sure that everybody's supporting the others and all that. And that's the hard part, I think. So
yeah. Knowing what to measure that's a whole episode right there. We don't want to cover that right now because that's a whole episode. Excellent. All right. Torsten, what are your thoughts on operating models?
I find what everybody said, that's exactly right, in that finally we're coming to that old spirit of DevOps that I remember from many years ago, where we always said, oh yeah, DevOps culture allows everybody to make mistakes, and we are all working together, we are all one team and working toward the same key performance indicators, if you will. But that's not how it used to work, as we all know, right? You still got nailed for your mistakes. And people were talking about you if you were the one that was responsible for messing up a release or for being late, or I even see that in a lot of companies where they compare in a negative way, actually, for quality indicators for releases, where you see, oh yeah, that team over there, they always have the most bugs in this and that area, and the most tickets coming in until 4 weeks after the release, and things like that are not that collaborative, or not collaborative at all. And the fact that business is getting involved gives that ability to make mistakes a lot more legitimacy. Hard word for German. And that's what it needs, right? It needs buy-in from the top, that you actually get into that culture where you can make mistakes and can experiment, as long as you document it, and as long as you learn from it and do it differently next time. And that goes in line with the second big part, and that's the decentralization and microservices, where we all talk about microservices. We kind of see it as inevitable that we're going to get there. Some say to 50%, others say to 60, 70, 80%, but we all agree we are only there for like 20%, maybe 25%. And we all want to get to that same place. And the question is, how do we get there? How do we give the developers that ability to work in an uninhibited way, without technology, operations technology, infrastructure technology getting in the way? And that's what a lot of companies are working on. How can I rein in the complexity and the compliance issues and the security concerns and the unknown risk factors that are there when you give autonomy to teams? How can I rein that in without slowing DevOps down?
And I think that the data that we just saw, a big focus on automating that pipeline. How do you eliminate the toil from a developer and make it so that they can, I know if I'm going to give an input, I'm going to get a specific output. If they give an input and they get a random output from that CI pipeline, then they're not going to want to use it. They're not going to want to take advantage of something that screws up all the time.
Yeah.
So having automation that works, because you've mentioned this a bunch of times, and I don't know how to make it any more underscored, experimentation. If you're experimenting, then you're learning. But if you're experimenting and you can't control all the variables in your experiment, that's just chaos. That's not an experiment. That's just you doing random stuff. So I think that that's a hugely important thing. If you can, in 2023, if you can figure out a way to operationalize experimentation, right? That becomes gold.
Yeah, I like this comment that I'm just seeing in the chats by Yishnu. They're always moving on once they figured something out in DevOps, and they are not documenting the benefits. And that's exactly what you said, Sam.
That's right.
The benefits need to get absorbed and ideally shared across teams so that mistakes don't have to be repeated.
That's right. Great point. I love that. So this is the magic. Thank you for that. All right, Mitch, what are your thoughts on this?
So kind of stepping back for a moment, Sam, your organization did some research during the pandemic that showed that the broader organization was adapting agile DevOps kind of principles like cross-functional teams, daily stand-ups, when we all couldn't go to the office. If you kind of move fast forward to where we are today, there's an interesting parallel happening with the business and with our transformation to the cloud. Just like we moved into this kind of virtual world, brick and mortar isn't the same, hold the same importance. It is important, but it's not the same importance that it did 2 years ago or a year ago. Now it's all about multiple delivery models. Yes, there may be brick and mortar, digital experiences online through web. We almost assume mobile apps are come with every application we're going to develop. Even APIs now are products. We deliver services through integrating through other services, and it can be done globally. We can experiment with new ideas, new products, new features in targeted places in the world, not just where we have locations of stores. So we've really kind of virtualized the delivery options as well as the physical options for the business, just like we've done so with our technology stack and our data centers, which we still have, as well as what we can do in the cloud. So we're all kind of moving in this path together. It isn't just a technology transformation.
Right. It goes back to the conversations that we've had around the culture, the importance of that culture, the operating model. I think but we're getting better at it, which is great. It's so good to see us as a people, as a humanity, getting better at it. And that's the thing. I think Gene Kim, there's another quote, it's one of my favorite quotes, is the quality of the daily work is less important than the improvement in the quality of the daily work. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if you're not very good right now. Just keep trying, get better.
I know Charlie said not to mention ITIL, but I want to just reflect on that again. Remember that chapter, Continuous Improvement? I think it was chapter 5 in ITIL 2 or 1 even. I mean, we're right there. We're finally internalizing that. And I think that's what you said, Sam, which is beautiful, I think. But there is still work to be done, and roles to be changed, and metrics to be defined, and people to be reorganized continuously into better and more better.
People to be brought along.
Yeah, exactly.
To be brought along. Yeah, that's wonderful. Awesome. Okay, so last topic. Do we have a DevOps New Year's resolution? What are you going to do this next year that you didn't do last year, or that you didn't do to your satisfaction last year? So let us know in the chat. What is your New Year's resolution for DevOps? And Torsten, I'm going to start with you. What are you feeling, or what are you hearing from your clients that they're planning on tackling next year?
If Torsten doesn't have anything to say, I can go.
Oh, so I'm sorry. Old rookie mistake. I come back to my favorite topic, and that's automation, and not accepting that certain things cannot be automated, and at the same time becoming declarative to become scalable in our automation, where businesses are really pushing, and where we encourage them to also really push to declarative definitions that don't make application environments and DevOps processes and anything dependent on the specific underlying infrastructure. As much as we may love Kubernetes or AWS or some Azure, whatever anybody likes, it's becoming more about getting it scalable across the organization, and also getting it scalable in terms of making the individual application scalable by declaratively defining things, and having a controller consolidate between the desired state and the current state instead of scripting our way there. And what I'm seeing there, and what I look forward to the new year, what I want to focus more on, I see this a lot in my data, research data, is that everybody wants to learn Python. Python is like everywhere in DevOps and sometimes even in IT ops. And I'm curious to see how people apply that Python knowledge that they all seem to be learning, and in how far that can help us become more scalable. Is it declarative that they are doing it? What exactly are they using it for? Maybe it's just for becoming familiar with the logic of automating things, and it's not even about Python, but also because Python is so closely intertwined with machine learning, where then obviously in the following step you're going to start using pandas and all of the machine learning libraries to influence the automation and to make the automation conditional on the situation that is going on. And again, we come back to the observability question there, where observability tools automate the responses to issues that they find based on what the business value of those issues is, the potential business impact. So yeah, I apologize, a couple of topics intertwined here.
No, I think that's great. A lot of interesting stuff going on in chat. The big question for you, Torsten, is tabs or spaces?
I'm not outing myself one way or the other.
He doesn't want to give anybody a way to troll him. I love it. Okay, very good. All right, so thank you, Torsten. Let's see. Bruno, what are your thoughts on this?
I want to talk about Python.
Okay.
Yeah. Mitch over here really touched a nerve. But for me, the New Year's resolution is, and this is an internal one here, at Sumo that I'm trying to sort of impart, so it's got to be a little bit kind of narrower, but essentially to implement observability for our business analytics and business KPIs. And what do I mean by that? I think we are obviously a cloud-first technology company, B2B, all of that. And we kind of live or die by our data. And we use observability internally, we use our security tools internally and all of that stuff, but really trying to kind of get our business executive suite into a kind of a operating model where we can look at our business analytics, business KPIs, information that is flowing straight off of the presses of our SaaS platform that our customers use. Many thousands of customers use it every day. I want to be able to get that information in the hands of our executive suite, essentially with zero latency, zero delay, none of that last quarter, this is what happened, what should we do next quarter? Like, this is what happened an hour ago. This is how things are changing. We launched this is what's happening. This is kind of how our users are behaving. And we're actually making pretty great strides towards that. We are, we have an ongoing effort that is going to make this a reality. And, maybe a few months from now, if we get back together, I'll be able to report on it. But I'm super excited about it because I do think that sort of that's going to go further in aligning that business to technology relationship that we talked about half an hour ago, right? That once I can have all this information flowing from our technical systems, right, into the hands of the executives across different functions, it's going to be amazing. So I'm super excited about it. It's not easy, but I look forward to it quite a bit.
And I want to put out here is that this is what Sumo Logic does for a living, is provide this data to people. And just because it's the cobbler's children have no shoes sort of story, right? You'd think that we would have been all on top of this already because we have the technology, but it's not about technology. We've talked about it a bunch of times already. It's about culture. It's about how your org is structured. It's about focus, right? And so this is really great to hear that.
And in this case, Sam, I will just add, we are pioneering something that's maybe a little bit novel with this effort, because we're taking the observability technology that we have, which is typically used to peer into the data of how is the application running what's disrupting it, what might be, issues in security with, right? We're elevating it to start taking that same technology, the same methodology of observe everything, collect all the data, and then be able to put a different lens on, which is the business analytics lens. Right? Nice. I think that's what we're trying to sort of accomplish here, because this exhaust that our application emits, at multi-terabyte a day volume every day, has so much valuable business insight that we really want to leverage it to run our business.
Nice, awesome. All right, Evelyn.
Yeah, mine is not as geeky as Python and anything else. I have had some interesting conversations with people in Zurich and London last week and a couple of weeks ago. My New Year's resolution is bring the heart into work, be more human, meaning have more resilience, because it's going to be tough. The next 2 years or so, we have an economic challenge across the world. So you have to have resilience. Be more creative. Don't bog down on your creativity, even so if you're in technology. Inspire those around you, and then be frustrated, because I think when you're frustrated, you can actually move walls or move silos or remove silos. One habit at a time. Have atomic habits. And then the last one, I want to make sure people network more, because look what we're doing today. It's absolutely beautiful. So I'm stressing, bring the heart, be human, for the New Year's resolution next year and beyond.
I like that. +1 on that one, plus 1,000.
Yeah, it's another cultural point.
Yeah, awesome. All right, Charlie, what are your thoughts here?
Well, how do I top Evelyn? That was brilliant. I'm really going to be focused on operating model. I'm going to continue to be very attentive to that. JP Morgan Chase has designated 30 IT general managers as mini CEOs, which I think is indicative of this trend towards business within a business. It's an old 50-year-old word, intrapreneurship, not entrepreneurship, but intrapreneurship, the idea of operating as you are a business within a business. And I'm curious how far this is going to go. I mean, our organization is going to seriously start moving in that direction of micro enterprises and devolving the P&Ls and allowing for, a lot more of basically, sorry, I'm drawing a blank, basically moving into that model of micro enterprises.
Right.
So I'll be watching that.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that starts to get at the heart of the misalignment, but it also makes that alignment a lot harder, because you have all these now little pieces that you have to try and all align. Somehow there's an outcome at the top of all that everyone must align to. That can't be easy to figure out. Right? Awesome. And Mitch, last but not least, and before I have you go, Mitch, I want to make sure that we read off our 4 $25 Amazon gift card winners. Number 1 is Yishnu N. Excuse me if I'm getting your name wrong. Mara M is number 2. Melanie N. and Darren B. Again, Yishnu M, Mara M, Melanie N, and Darren B. Look for communications from the DevOps.com folks. Mitch, you have 2 minutes to take us home. What are your New Year's resolutions? What are you seeing for folks for next year?
All righty. I think data is really, we kind of got left behind initially with DevOps, but it's reemerged. I think about data as the breaker of chains, the breaker of silos. I may be over optimistic, but elevating data, I think we now realize that it's just not exhaust, as Bruno said, but we're finding new and interesting ways, whether it's observability, it's analytics, it's AI, whatever it might be, but in all parts of the data. And because it's visible and accessible in much greater ways, that's transforming our business. And so that's causing me to rethink a lot of things about, as people have more access and utility of data, don't assume we can't break those silos, I guess is my New Year's resolution. So there's hope.
Nice. Very nice. Well, we are exactly at time. We planned this perfectly. You all said exactly what we rehearsed, which is perfect. You guys were exactly on message. Just teasing. It's completely unscripted. I really appreciate all of you taking the time to join and share your thoughts. I appreciate the chat audience. Thank you all for being here and making this a special episode. It's really, really great to have these brains with us to understand where we've been and where we're going is an extremely important part of our learning and our evolution. And so I look forward to seeing you all again next year when we can talk about what we did great next year, this year, and what we can do even better next year. Thank you, everybody. See you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.